Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SPED Talks with me, your host, Dr. Donna Steele. This is today's episode, will be our second of a six series of the new teacher edition, the new teacher series, rather. So last week we presented the first episode where we looked at taking care of you, those tips and strategies that could help you as a first year teacher, a new teacher, just a teacher who hasn't gotten it right and wants to feels like they're starting over. We presented some tips last week to help with being burnt out, tips that can help with your mental health, tips that can help with setting that mindset, that positive mindset going into your first year. So I presented 10 tips as to how to take care of you. So if you haven't checked it out yet, it's still on my YouTube channel. It's the first episode of the new teacher series. So when you get the chance, please go check it out. Today, I want to present you with 5 tips. 5 tips that are particularly important for the new special education teacher. Gen Ed teachers, you can enjoy the content as well, because that helps you to know what your colleagues um, endure, or what your colleagues have to go through as being special educators. There are certain things that may apply to you, so having that knowledge, you're able to keep them on their toes and remind them, because this job, we know how stressful it can get, and sometimes we're not always on top of it. So you having the knowledge you'll be able to assist them in reminding them, and I'll talk specifically to the point that applies to you as general education teacher. So today we want to talk about IEP related and compliance issues. So today's topic, IEP related and compliance tips. So let's delve in. So after years of college and student teaching, you finally landed this job as a first year special education teacher. This is what you prepared for, right? So what now? What now? How do we navigate the space as it relates to IEP and those compliance issues that you will face going into your first year and hopefully beyond? It is common for special education teachers to come in feeling particularly anxious, more anxious than their general education peers. I know that my first year, moving to the US, I was very anxious. And a big part of it, albeit I've been teaching for years, the system in Jamaica, which is where I'm from originally, is completely different from the system in the United States. Everything in the United States as it relates to IEP is grounded in legislation. In Jamaica, not so much. Yes, we have our policies and, our rules that guide certain things, but it's not necessarily grounded in the same way that it is here in legislation or legal mandates. So that was a bit scary for me moving from that system to here, because you hear the word legislation, you hear the word legal, you automatically think that if you don't follow those legal parameters that are set, then there are ramifications as it relates to you possibly violating the laws, right? So, of course, when you hear that, you get a little bit anxious because you want to do it correct, you want to do it right. So, our special education teachers are faced with these additional and unique responsibilities in this I want to say in this field, they're faced with that. Not to say that, other teachers aren't, but it's very big and it's very important that special education teachers follow the legal mandates that are set by these laws in the United States. And so I want to touch on that because it's very important. I think sometimes we underestimate how one simple mistake could lead to us being non-compliant. And I've never ever been non-compliant in my 18 years, and you can do it too if you follow these 5 tips that I'll present to you today. Um, so, which I wish I knew going in, albeit I've never been out of compliance per se. I just wish I had known some of these before coming in, because then it would have reduced the stress I felt every time during that first year. Every time I was supposed to have an IEP meeting, every time I was supposed to complete an IEP, I was just always nervous about making a mistake. I'm still a little bit nervous. I'm still nervous sometimes, but I'm more confident because now I have a system. So let me delve into the first point. My first tip is review IEP due dates. And I have my little cheat sheet here because I wrote everything down that I wanted to say to you guys today. Review IEP due dates. I cannot stress that enough. The due dates directly affect your compliance. So special education teachers, there are strict guidelines and timelines and deadlines that you have to adhere to in order to remain compliant. And a big part of that has to do with the dates. So in addition to planning your daily lessons and teachings, you're responsible rather for conducting what we call annual individual education plans or programs. It depends where you're at. Different districts call it. I have a different name for it. In my district, it's called the individual education program. But that annual individual education program meetings, that's directly you. That's where you create that IEP, that individual education physical plan for your student, outlining what you want them to achieve for the year. That plan lasts a whole year, and at the end of the year you do it all over again and you start the process all over again. You, the special education teacher, might be known as the team lead. You're the person who takes the lead on that student's education program. You're the person who they're going to come to. You're the person who makes sure everything is okay with that plan, albeit there might be different service providers such as speech, occupational therapists, and ABA therapists, or a behavior analyst, physical therapist, you name it. There are different team members who also has responsibility of adding to that document or adding, services to that program for the student depending on their needs. So you're responsible for conducting those meetings. Also, you also have a hand in with what's called the 3-year reevaluations. These documents, all these programs, all these plans come with different and specific timeframes that you have to abide by in order to stay compliant rather. As failing to meet these deadlines can result in a non-compliant IEP and potential citations from whether your school districts or by the state. So you see, it's important. Nobody wants to be cited by their district or the state for that matter. So it's very important that at the start of the year, you review each student's IEPs and you mark your calendars with the due dates. Um, it's just beneficial to prepare for the months when you'll possibly be the busiest with meetings and paperwork. So you want to get a head start on that, because it can become lot a lot more overbearing than you probably anticipate. So you just want to get that out the way. Now, many school districts have what we call a federal compliance specialist. The school district that I do work in now, we do have one of those at every school. Each school has a federal compliance specialist or a special education secretary. The names may differ depending on where you're at. So these people are very important because they assist us special educators in staying compliant. They will schedule meetings and ensure meetings are held before those deadlines. So those people should be some of your best friends in your schools or wherever you are. Those people, if you do have one, you're very lucky, and those people should be your best friends. In my previous district, I did not have access to a federal compliance specialist or even a special education secretary. I had to schedule all my meetings myself. I had to align everything with my team members to make sure this date worked, that date didn't work. I had to call parents. So it was a lot more stressful. In this particular school district, it's it's manageable because some of the work is obviously on this federal compliance specialist who schedules our meetings and navigate that process. And all you have to do is do your part in turning up at the meeting with your prepared documents, um, and your data. So yeah. But if you're not so lucky to have one, this number one tip, this first tip is even more important for you than someone else, another teacher who has access to a federal compliance specialist. Okay, so number two, review and organize your students' IEPs. So again, before you get started with your year, before you get that first couple of weeks that teachers normally get to come back to work while they're, fixing their rooms and making sure everything is in place, that first week or before students get in the building, you want to review and organize your students' IEPs. It is important to review all your students' individual education plans. Familiarize yourself with their goals, their needs, their services, accommodations. Most special education teacher, including myself, we create a binder, what we call a binder, with all the information for our students. So some places may call it a folder. It doesn't even matter. It's just an organization system that you want to have in place to keep all your IEPs and making sure they're easily accessible throughout the year. You have them all in one place. And what also works for me is having that cheat sheet, like a glimpse of the IEP, like that, a cheat sheet highlighting their goals. Because an IEP, some students in document could be 30 pages long. No one has the time to, even though you might have familiarized yourself and you know what's in that document, you cannot always be 100% certain, especially if it's a 30-page document per kid. So you want to have, again, this is what works for me. I've had in the past, and I continue to have, a 1 or 2 page document outlining a snippet of what the IEP entails. So on that document, I have students' goals, I have students' minutes, and sometimes I'll also have the curriculum that aligns with that goal. In the event, I'm not even there that day and a teacher picks it up, or a substitute picks it up. They know exactly what they should be working on, and they know exactly what curriculum aligns with that. That's in addition to a sub plan if you have a sub plan. But I like to have that kind of 1 page or 2 page summary of what the IEP should entail, those pertinent parts to the IEP, which includes the goal, the service time, and things like that. If you're an elementary school teacher or a resource room teacher, you'll develop your schedule based on your student service minutes and needs. So again, it's important to review those IEPs so you know how to develop your schedule. So it's not just for the reasons that I've laid out before, but it's also assist with your schedule. If you're a high school or middle school teacher who teaches a specific class or subject, you want to make sure that your students' goals are aligned with the curriculum you're teaching. This is also the same for teachers who are in self-contained classroom. Their schedules are aligned specifically with the class or the subject, um, the goals that are aligned with the class or the subject that you teach. So it assists you very well with your scheduling. So you want to definitely tip 2, review IEP due dates. You want to do that. Tip 3, provide general education teachers. And when I say general education teachers, these are the regular teachers, what we call regular ed teachers. You want to provide regular or general education teachers with accommodations. It's your responsibility to make sure gen ed teachers have access to students' accommodations, because they are not able to accommodate students if they don't have this information. So it's your job to ensure that that first step is taken in that same first week before students get to these teachers. You want to make sure that you have provided them with a copy of each student's accommodation. Now, some schools do it differently. Some may provide it electronically. Some may go around and make sure teachers have signed for it, because again, it goes back to being compliant. These teachers, if it's outlined in their IEPs that students should receive a particular accommodation, then these teachers should have the knowledge and should have the information so that they're able to provide them with the accommodation and not be out of compliance. Okay, we want to give those students the opportunity to work at their best potential. And they're not able to do that if they're supposed to be accommodated and we forget to accommodate them. So you want to put yourself in a position to make sure you are doing what's best for students and making sure that you're providing these accommodations to teachers at the start of the year before they are interacting with students. Okay, so that's my third tip. And gen ed teachers, I did say there would be one tip that's very applicable to you. This is the tip. If you know this information that you're supposed to receive an accommodation for each student at the start of the year, then in the event, you never know what could happen. A special education teacher forgot to provide this information. This is where you can remind him or her, you know, that you didn't receive an accommodation and you would like it, to make sure that you're not shortchanging a student. Um, uh, Along with the first tip, to make sure that the first point, rather, to make sure that gen ed teachers receive these accommodation, you want to also take time to go over the accommodation with teachers. Don't take it for granted. Don't assume that these teachers understand what's expected of them. So you want to go through, as some schools may put, like at the start of the year, may assign 15 minutes, or a lot rather, 15 minutes for teachers, special education teachers to meet, 15 minutes per grade level for special education teachers to meet with regular ed teachers and kind of go down the line and speak about what each accommodation means. What does extended time mean, for example? What does time and a half means, for example? Things like that. We want to make sure that it's not assumed, and we're explicit in our instruction as to what should be done. You want to underscore the importance of the teachers following the IEP. Again, it's related to compliance, and it's a legal mandate that we provide students with an accommodation if that's their need. So you want to underscore the importance of following it. Because it gets hard where students and even teachers mostly, we get caught up and sometimes we forget things. But we want to make sure that this is not one of those things that is forgotten, because it's important. Students need accommodation. Many students rely on accommodation in order for them to meet their true potential, and we don't want to shortchange students. So it's very important that we underscore the importance of using the accommodations for students within the general education setting. You want to provide updated accommodations when applicable. After every meeting, sometimes the accommodations may change. Sometimes the ones that we put in place may not have worked, or we find that the student doesn't need it anymore. So you want to update those when applicable, and you want to present an updated copy to teachers when applicable and parents. You want to make sure to do so before the effective date of the new IEP. So throughout the year, If it changes, now then remember, this is not before the school year now. This is during the year. So you want to make sure as soon as that it changes and before that effective date on the new IEP or the new amended IEP or accommodation goes in place, you want to provide that to the respective general education teachers. So that leads us to tip number 4. Remember, I said I had 5. We're going through pretty fast this week. Number 4, you want to devise a plan for your IEP meetings. Again, this is another point I cannot stress enough. Um, Planning is everything when it comes to IEPs and having those meetings. As a first year teacher, that's going to be your best strategy, is to have a plan. So devise a plan for IEP meetings. Running your first IEP meeting can be very stressful. So without a plan, you're planning to fail if you don't have a plan. So as a new special education teacher, I felt intimidated, as I said before. I felt stressed and I felt unqualified leading my first meeting. Again, the system from where in Jamaica to here is a little bit different. I felt very unqualified. But over the years, I've learned the best strategy to combat those feelings, as I said before, is to come prepared. So you want to come prepared, prepare an agenda to keep you on track, understand the student's current IEP needs, and devise a plan for the new goals and services you intend to propose. And this particular tip piggybacks on number 2, where you're familiarizing yourself with the student's IEP. In order to devise a plan, you have to have a knowledge or some knowledge, enough knowledge to know what these new goals and services should look like. Because these new goals and services, you determine the new goals and services based on what obtained in the previous IEP or the previous goals. Did the student master these goals? Were these goals too ambitious for the student? Did I provide enough service time? So if you're going to change, you have to have your data to back up what you're trying to say. So it's very important that you devise the plan based on the knowledge of what you had before. As the lead of the IEP team, be sure to converse frequently with other service providers, such as your speech therapist, your occupational therapist, your physical therapist, your ABA therapist, your behavior analyst, or your behavior person, different service providers throughout your school or throughout your district. So you have an idea of how students are doing in these other areas. But even though you don't serve them in it, you want to go into that IEP meeting having some knowledge of how that student was progressing in those areas. So though you don't want to be blindsided by a proposal being made during the meeting, and it just allows for a smooth meeting. You don't want to be blindsided with a parent asking you a question about a particular service provider and what they offer, especially in the absence of that service provider. So you want to have some knowledge as the team lead. And what that means, you're the person in charge of this student. So you're this student's case manager. So you should be apprised of some of the information that's required as it relates to other service providers. While creating a new IEP is always a team decision, you want to bring a tentative plan, because it will not only make you seem prepared, but you will be respected that you came prepared and organized, making the team wanting to trust you and making the team think you know what you're doing. So your professionalism is big here. You want to come organized and not seem confused by what you're saying. So definitely come with a plan. To ensure a more seamless type of meeting, many teachers provide their parents or their guardians with a tentative copy of the IEP. before the meeting. That way, it gives the parents the opportunity to review what's being proposed, and they can formulate their questions. They can come prepared with their questions, their comments or suggestions. Just come into the meeting already prepared with those things concerning maybe a goal or a particular service that's being provided. In some school district, this is actually mandatory that you provide the parents and or guardian with a tentative IEP, a proposed IEP of those goals and services. In others, it's not necessarily mandatory. You can provide that information. You can introduce the proposed IEP rather in the meeting, right then and there in the meeting, giving you, the teacher, more time to complete the document. But e- either way, you have to be prepared. So if you provide it before the meeting so that they can have a look at it, or if you do so within the meeting, you have to be prepared. So that devising a plan for the IEP meetings, it's not negotiable. It's something that you have to do. Um, while going into a meeting with a plan is important, it's also important to make sure you do not go in with what we call any predetermination. Any predetermination as to what what a student's goal might be or what the time duration of a service may be. You don't want to do that, because again, it's a team decision. As you want to go in with objective lens, and you want to use your data to show that the reason why I'm proposing this is because so and so. However, remember, it's a proposal. So at the end of the day, it's a team decision that includes the parents, for us to decide collectively what the final IEP will include. So do not go in making predetermination that does not have everybody's input. So in a lot of cases, sometimes our parents might be absent from a meeting, and they tell you up front that they're not going to be able to make a meeting. And a lot of teachers run into the problem where they think that, oh, this is an opportunity for me to put anything I want to put in this IEP and make a predetermination without the team's decision. In such case, I would suggest you send an IEP home if you knew that the parents wouldn't be in attendance beforehand, and you send that IEP home. Legally, you have three means of communicating that meeting to the parent. So it shouldn't be just a one attempt, a parent didn't pick up, so we're just going to have the meeting without. You have three attempts that you need to make legally in the US, to get, you know, to get that parent. Now, if the parent lets you know they won't be coming, I would suggest that you send home a proposed IEP and have them look at it, and they could possibly provide their feedback in a phone call or at the car line when they come to drop their kids off, or whatever the case may be. That way, you're giving them an opportunity to see what um, is being proposed before the meeting in their absence. Does that make sense? So that would be my suggestion. Um, and then the parent could always object if you sent it home and they weren't in the meeting, and we legally could have the meeting without them after three different types of attempts made, which would include mailing the invitation home, a phone call, an email, I believe, is the other way that we can get in touch with them. Um, and after we've shown that we've made all three attempts to no avail, then we can have the meeting. However, I would again suggest that you send home a tentative email, proposed plan, before the meeting, just to kind of get their feedback. Because again, it's a team decision, and the parent is a very important player in the IEP process. That brings us to our fifth and final point, and this is relying on your mentor. As a first year special education teacher, relying on someone who knows more than you is important. Again, because we are grappling with compliance, we're grappling with federal mandates here, especially in the United States. So you definitely want to consult with people who knows a little bit more, rely on that mentor to guide you, because I can't even, I don't even want to go back to remember in my first meeting that I had as a special educator. I was terrified. I felt intimidated going in front of parents to have to chair this meeting as an expert about, their children. And I struggled my very first meeting. I had a mentor. I wasn't offered, I wasn't given the opportunity to have my mentor assist me in, probably navigating that first meeting. I had to do that myself. And boy, it was a train wreck. So this last point, relying on your mentor, is crucial. Now, a lot of school districts will assign you a mentor, or your school may assign you a mentor. Unfortunately, when I moved here, there was not, I was the only special education teacher in that school. So I did not have a mentor. It was like a one woman's department. I was the one woman. So it crashed and it burnt. So did not have a mentor. So as a new special education teacher, your school will likely provide you with an assigned mentor, unless it's a case of what happened to me, but that was way back then. I think we've learned a lot these days that we definitely need to have more support for teachers. And so going forward, all the other schools that I went to, the other districts I went to had mentors that were able to assist me. So you want to seek out that person if you haven't been assigned one, but if you've assigned one, you want to ask a lot of questions of that person. You want to ask the big question. If you're a first year teacher, if you're new to special education, not necessarily a first year teacher, but new to special education, you want to ask whoever your mentor is, ask if you can observe one of their IEP meetings and have them attend your IEP meetings until you feel somewhat comfortable to conduct them on your own. I didn't have that very first time, hence it crashed and burned. But this is where, if you have these people in your building, you want to utilize them. You want to make the most of their expertise. Most veteran teachers will enjoy helping any new teachers. I know I enjoy helping new teachers, whether it be special education teachers or just regular education teachers or just someone who wants to learn. So that's the first thing. Don't shy away from that. They will be willing to help. If your assigned mentor isn't helpful or doesn't have time to help, this is where you may need to seek out someone else or try reaching out to your school district or your administrator and ask for help. Again, I didn't have that very first time. So I know the importance of having this support, this type of support. So try reaching out to your special education department at your school district or your administrator for assistance. Being a new special education teacher, it gets lonely sometimes and isolating sometimes, So take that initiative, ask for assistance, ask for help. The help is there. You just have to ask for it. So that concludes this episode. So I presented 5 tips. And as a reminder, let me just review them quickly. So the first tip, you want to review IEP due dates. That's one. Two, review and organize your students' IEPs. Three, provide your general education teachers rather with accommodations. So you want to provide them with the accommodations. Four, devise a plan for IEP meetings. Don't go in those meetings without a plan. And five, you want to rely on your mentor. You want to rely, whether it's an assigned mentor or a chosen mentor, meaning you seek someone out and you just ask them to be your mentor, you know, unofficially or informally. But those are my 5 tips for today as it relates to today's topic, IEP related and compliance tips. So this is again Dr. Donna Steele signing out of our second episode. So feel free to catch the other episodes on my YouTube channel, Sped Talks with Dr. Donna Steele. And until next time, goodbye.